Hi, my name is Erica Belofsky. I'm the Community Outreach Specialist with HD Reach, and I am so excited for this webinar, HD Has Color. This is a much needed discussion. This is the realities of a lot of our own community members and their lives and they're experiencing within racial injustices within the healthcare system. And no, we want to spread awareness that no matter the color of your skin, no matter your experiences, HD does not discriminate. So I felt that it would be incredibly important to have a powerhouse in the HD community. Latorius Adams here to help facilitate this conversation. And Latorius, if you would take it away, I would love for you to explain a little bit about yourself and then introduce our webinar speakers for today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erica, for putting this together. My name is Latorius Adams, and I work at UNC Chapel Hill, Department of Neurology, under Dr. Claudia Testa, and she came here about 2 years ago and started the Huntington's disease clinic. When I saw the job posting, I'm like, what is Huntington's disease? In my past experience, I've worked with families with dementia, particularly Alzheimer's. And when I saw this, I said, yeah, this may be a good role for me. When I got in the role, I only saw white patients. And I said, well, maybe this is honestly a disease that does not affect African Americans. I had no idea until I was introduced to some of our patients. What really opened my eyes is at HD Reach Education Day, everyone was talking about a book written by an African American woman, and she's on here today, Miss Tanita Allen. And the book blew my mind to the point that I reached out to her and just set up a Zoom meeting just to talk to her because it really, really was incredible. It's an incredible story. Just you being here today is a blessing in itself. We also have Miss Cathy Davis, but I'll start with whoever wants to go first and just tell me, like, what is your connection to Huntington's disease?
Well, I can start. My name is Tanita, and I actually have Huntington's disease. I was diagnosed in 2012. I am the first person in my family to have this diagnosis. So I didn't come from a history or a long line of people to have as a reference point. I started showing symptoms in 2010. It's something that I thought was small was the movement of the toes. I had involuntary movements of my toes. And then it moved up to the upper trunk, my fingers, my face, my neck. I had vocal tics. I had all kinds of it was absolutely, my body was just out of control. So I freaked out because I was scared because I didn't know what was going on. And I went to see numerous neurologists, especially movement disorder specialists, were the ones that I saw specifically. And I was told that, out of all the possibilities, they knew for a fact that I did not have Huntington's disease because I am Black. And Black people don't get Huntington's disease. It's just not common. And so that's one thing we can scratch off the list. So I was ruled out not having Parkinson's. That was ruled out pretty quickly. And then I was accused of a lot of things, everything from being a drug addict to, having psychiatric issues. It was really hard. It was really hard because I went down a road where it was like a 2-year nightmare of going from doctor to doctor, institution to institution, with teams of doctors, not just one doctor here, one doctor there. There were teams of them, and they would all examine me, and they would watch. Some of them even videotaped me, and they all would say, this has to be something else. It has to be psychiatric, or this is something you're making up. You're doing this on purpose. You're drug seeking. Because what they would do is I would shake a lot, and then I would go into the emergency room, and they would shoot me up with Ativan. And Ativan paralyzes the muscles in the body. So Ativan is also a controlled substance. And they would send me home with once the muscles stopped twitching, once I stopped having involuntary movements, they would say, okay, you're better, go home. So then they would send me home a paper that said, if you have any more symptoms, you could come back. Right. So I would come back. And whenever I had to move, because the drug would wear off, it had a short lifespan as far as its being able to work. And then they said, you're coming here to seek drugs. You're looking for to get high. And I was like, no, I can't stop shaking, and I'm scared, and I don't know what's going on, you know. And so anyway, it took a long time, and it took multiple attempts. I wrote about this in my book, We Exist, about my journey. So I'll stop there.
Thank you for sharing. It's a lot to take in. And I see Miss Cathy there is feeling emotional. So if you need a minute, because it's real, it's definitely real. But you are a testament that you're still here today. Miss Cathy, would you want to share your connection to Huntington's disease?
It's very frustrating to listen to her testimony. As people of color, you all know what we endure. So to not even get the basic, proper medical things that we need, and to watch our families suffer, it's just hard. And then for you to have teams of doctors that not even willing to hear you out, to not value what you have to say, it's just frustrating for me to hear your story. It's frustrating what I have been through being a caregiver for my family members, but watching this disease just rip through my family line, it's just making me a little bit emotional. Again, like I said, we have a long history of Huntington's in my family. On my stepdad's side, there were 7 boys. 5 of those boys had Huntington's. 2 did not. Those 2, they took genes from the mother's side, and the other 5 took genes from the father's side. So that's how they ended up with Huntington's. During that time that they were diagnosed, I don't think that anyone knew then that they had Huntington's. It wasn't until a team of doctors from Johns Hopkins University came down and tested the family members, and that's how it was discovered. My uncle, one of the ones who didn't have Huntington's, he took care of all 5 of those brothers. So he is well versed in seeing this disease and what it does, you know, and how it rips through your family. To take care of 5 individuals, you know, to see them go through the different stages, go through nursing homes, and then to all pass away within a matter of years. None of those brothers, I don't think, made it out of their 50s. They were all diagnosed in their 40s, and I don't think anyone made it out of their 50s. Now, my stepdad, he and my mom have 2 sons. So I have 2 brothers who were also diagnosed with Huntington's. My middle brother, he passed in 2022 from Huntington's. And then my baby brother, who is 48, just turned 49, he also has Huntington's as well and is in a nursing home. Latorius, are
Yes,
you here?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Mhm.
I am surprised that I never got to meet you. And I say that because my brother, my baby brother, he spent a span of 8 months in UNC hospital. And this was pretty recent. So I'm surprised I never got to meet you. You would have probably been a huge value to me in helping me navigate, helping me get him the help he needed. there was only one doctor on his team that had worked with a patient that had Huntington's. So it was very difficult trying to get him in a nursing facility. It was very difficult trying to get him the proper care that he needed. We have just had a huge struggle with navigating through Huntington's for him. And so I do the best that I can as, his caregiver, but it is very difficult.
Dr. Claudia Testa came from, I think it was BCU or either Georgetown.
Mhm.
And so the clinic is fairly new. I've been with her for a year. So that's probably how I missed your
Okay.
brother, but it's very new there. Duke does have a Huntington's disease program as well. That's very good. I'm actually honored and blessed to be in this position. As soon as I started, Erica came to every clinic visit with me to educate me on the disease. I wanted to be educated because that is a lot of the problem. A lot of people don't know and they're not aware.
Mhm.
And it makes me want to ask you both. I know some of Miss Allen's, but before your family got diagnosed, were they diagnosed with schizophrenia or bipolar? Like what did they think was going on before John Hopkins came in?
So I only know that my grandfather had it, and then that's how my dad and my uncles how it got passed to them. So
Okay,
I don't know what medical diagnosis they would have gotten prior to that. I'm not sure. Well, they did. My grandfather was diagnosed with Huntington's, so it had to be somewhere in the lineage before him. But I'm only 52, so I don't know how
gotcha,
far back, what they were diagnosing it
gotcha.
as that then.
Um,
Well, in my family, people it explains so much about that side of the family that it came from because both of my parents were tested afterwards, and it came from my mother's side. My mother is a genetic match to me. We both have the positive gene, so they figured they obviously knew it came from my mom. My siblings that I have with my mother, I have a brother and a sister, and both were diagnosed as having schizoaffective disorder or like
Mm.
bipolar disorder, and they have some issues, that way they were diagnosed as having mental issues. And since then, my sister has been tested and she is positive also for Huntington's. um, and my brother's reluctant to get tested at this time.
so what
So
are some specific barriers that you feel the African American community face in accessing care for Huntington's disease?
One, first of all, just being believed. Um,
Hmm.
it's just very difficult navigating through this disease. I had a very hard time getting nursing care for Kennedy when it was time for him to come from the hospital. Also, because he, couldn't get the proper medication when he came to the hospital he was in a group home at first. And because his medication was being raised and lowered so much, it was hard to get him stabilized. So there was an incident that happened at the nursing home that landed him in the hospital. And from there, they took and just stripped him of everything that he was on and then just started completely over. So navigating through that whole process to find the proper medication, that works for Huntington's patients, because there are going to be instances where, it's going to take time for things to work. So, he's going to have behavioral issues. He's going to have highs. He's going to have lows. Some's going to work. Some are not going to work. So just navigating through that whole process was very difficult and watching him go through that. But once they were able to find the proper medications and dosages to get his behavior leveled out, it was okay. But I feel like we are at a point where we should know what works for Huntington patients and what doesn't. But just navigating through that is very difficult.
And I think what needs to happen is a lot of medical schools need to educate their medical students when they're beginning in their medical journey of becoming a doctor or whatever, nurse practitioner or any clinician of any kind. I think they need to be aware of Huntington's, but also because a lot of them didn't even know they call it Huntington's chorea. And that's, I've had doctors even tell me that, call it Huntington's chorea. And I said, no, it's Huntington's disease. It's there's more to it than just the choreatic movements. So things like that, of exactly what it is, but also that it's in all populations. It is everywhere, all over the world. I mean, I was shocked. I was surprised to see that it was in China. It's in, it's in well, definitely I knew about South America.
Yeah, when I saw your interview and you said it populated in Venezuela.
Yes, yeah. I based it off of Venezuela project is an actual study. It's a 10-year study that was specifically about an entire village in Venezuela where the majority of the people have Huntington's. They have the largest per capita in the world, compared to any populations with Huntington's. They have the largest concentrated amount. And a lot of people ignore that. And they are people of color,
Right.
but the thing is, they were able to genetically trace some of their lineage back to the colonization, because if people know history, that's another thing. If you know history, you know that colonization took place, and because of slavery and colonization and all that other stuff, people mixed in with other populations, and that is how the gene can possibly be in existence. So people need to understand that it does exist in Asian populations, it does exist in Hispanic populations, African American populations, and Middle Eastern or whatever. It's everywhere, and they need to keep an open mind and look at us as if we are on the same playing level field as far as like the criteria for diagnosing us. They need to look at that and consider that first before coming to that conclusion that, oh no, it's not possible in your family. And I think it really should start with the schools, the medical schools and the training, the nursing schools and the training, the different hospitals and and their training. They need to be trained about this disease.
With you saying that, it brings me to another question I have for you ladies. How can healthcare providers ensure that treatment plans are culturally competent and responsive to the needs of diverse patients?
I think the treatment plans should definitely be more culturally sensitive to the fact that, on our socioeconomic levels, maybe if you don't have a lot of resources or access to resources, or maybe if you're not as educated as some populations are, they need to be able to explain, well, what are the best options for your care, without sounding like they're talking down to you or being condescending. They need to learn how to effectively communicate with all types of people, whether it's a different religion or whether it's a different ethnic origin. They need to be more culturally sensitive, and I think that's also important. That type of training needs to come in play with hospitals and institutions.
Can you repeat that question again?
Yes, I can. How can healthcare providers ensure that treatment plans are culturally competent and responsive to the needs of diverse patients? Or what does a doctor's visit look like for you and your brother? And how do you feel like you are getting the most from that visit?
Okay, when he was in the hospital, I don't feel like he was given the proper treatment. A lot of things, like I said, a lot of medications that he was given, a lot of stuff was just trial and error to see what's going to work for him and what doesn't. it even got to the point where they actually put him in a posy bed. And I'm not sure if you all are familiar what a posy bed is, but it actually looks like a cage. Yeah, it looks like a cage. It looks like a hospital bed with a cage over it,
Oh my
but it
goodness.
has ventilation. It's just a lot of things that need to be done in regards to treatment for Huntington's patients and research and just getting them to where they need to be.
I agree. I've never heard of that.
You never heard of a posy bed?
No, maybe not that calling it that name, but I'm picturing it. And
So
to me,
that was the term that the doctor
oh, the
gave me.
doctor said, okay,
I had never
gotcha.
heard of one either. But
To me,
it's
that
called,
would be scary for him.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah.
like you said, you're in a cage, and
yeah,
that can set off other things.
yeah. So it was very scary for him. It was very traumatic for me to see him in it.
Correct.
And I immediately asked for him to be removed from it.
Right.
Because, with Huntington's, there are a lot of behavior issues
Mm-hmm.
until you can get that medication properly adjusted and leveled out.
Correct.
So he was displaying a lot of agitation. And when he can't communicate something, he's not verbal. So all he knows to do is to lash out to get his communication across. And so I don't know if they did it as a safety precaution, but it was a little much.
If it was a safety precaution, it probably should have been your decision or talked amongst with you as you being part of his care team also. And with you saying about more research and stuff, have either one of you or your families been asked to participate in research studies, and how do you feel about participating in research, knowing the history of our ancestors and other African American communities? How do you feel, and what is your take on that?
We haven't been asked to participate in any research studies outside of just what John Hopkins came down to do. I feel like it's very imperative to have the research done. Like I said, we have a strong presence on my side of the family. And it's going to be imperative that we have the research. My brothers also have children who haven't been tested, and those kids have children. So you could see how this could potentially spread through the family. And if, the proper education is not out there and available and the resources, they don't know these things.
Correct. What was the name of the John Hopkins study again that you mentioned?
It's called Williamson 1 and Williamson 2.
And I'm going to interject. When was that study done?
It had to be around the early 90s.
So you're saying that there's documented study on your family
Yes.
since the 90s
Yes.
that HD has been
Yes.
within your family line.
Yes. I would have to speak with my uncle. I'm not even sure how they found about our family, but it was a team of doctors that did come down, and they did the testing. I guess because it was just such a huge presence in the family. Again, going back to what Miss Allen said, them not believing that African Americans can have Huntington's, if that's what drew them here, I'm not even sure, like I said, how they found out about the family.
What are your thoughts, Tanita, on participating in research?
I can see both sides. There's two sides of the coin. On the one hand, a lot of Black people have been wrongly studied and also exploited,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of bad ways through the medical
Mm-hmm.
research. So there's always that hint of being a little suspicious about it at first, But in the case of Huntington's disease, I did enroll HD, and I just started with that this year. I don't know what that's going to do. They just drew my blood, and they basically, did a few tests, asked me a few questions. and they're supposed to follow up with me every year. But as far as like doing studies like, lumbar punctures in the spine and all that other stuff, I'm skeptical with certain medical procedures. Um, I'm just a little skeptical about it. Um, right now, I'm
Yeah.
always very leery when they come out with new medications, because I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be a guinea pig. So I want to make sure that the medication is effective and it's not going to cause more damage than actual benefits.
What you just said, I wrote an article maybe 2 years ago when I was working in the Alzheimer's program, and it was basically talking about African Americans in clinical research. And what you just described is the study you're involved in with Enroll HD is an observational study. They're just asking questions and they follow up every year versus a medication or a lumbar puncture. I find that when I was working recruiting for studies, majority of African Americans would agree to be an observational study, right? But not a medication. And there are reasons for that. I think sometimes as a whole, research, they need to educate us more on the difference. And so that when people are recruiting, they know the difference. They just drew your blood and asked you questions. You're not taking a medication or placebo. People need to know the difference in research. And then maybe that will, like you said, flip that coin. I will participate if it's just observational. On the other hand, if I have to do a lumbar punch or MRI, I don't want to, they need to know the difference and be aware and definitely know what it all entails. I do know that this came a long way with as far as the inclusion, exclusion criteria, that they have to make sure you thoroughly understand what you're agreeing to do and that you can always back out of it. I think it has came a long way, but I think until it is described and educated to more African Americans, the first answer is going to be no, right? But
Yep.
if you know more and the reason and the benefit and what is this doing for me, what is this doing for my family, then I may agree to. I also see that some individuals will tell their doctor yes. But then when the research coordinator calls them to follow up, they're like, no, I just told my doctor yes, so I could just get out the room, and it's okay to say no, or it's okay to say, what is this about? What is this doing? What is the purpose of this? I think now we're in a place we can ask those questions. We can ask those uncomfortable questions. We have that right. We have that voice to do that. I appreciate you saying that, because there are different studies as far as it's not just a medication. It's observational to see how you're changing year to year without taking a medicine. It's just answering questions, right? So I am glad to know that you, as an African American woman, agreed to take part in that study, observational study. That's it, no medication. So I like that, Tani. I like that, and I like your whole story, because what you went through, you could be like X on everything. No, not doing it, not no part in it. But what you're doing is like you're breaking ground, like you're remarkable. For you to even still be here to write a book about your story, to participate in a research study or observational study, to do interviews, like it speaks volumes for me being a Black woman, that you are using your voice, and you are using your voice in a powerful way to inspire other people. I don't have any connection to Huntington's disease personally, aside from working with it. And I feel for every patient, every color. Like HD is color. Everybody that walks in there. And just you doing that is remarkable. And Cathy, your story with your family, like I could not imagine an entire family going through this. So then this leads me to this question for each of you. What does a day look like? What does a typical day look like for you, Tanita, living with the disease, and you, Cathy, being a caregiver or watching your family members be caregivers?
My brother So when he left the hospital, he was put into a nursing home against my wishes. So it was hard navigating, getting him out of that facility. It was hard watching him not getting the proper care that he needed, not being properly taken care of, because again, people aren't familiar with Huntington's or they don't understand Huntington's. Granted, when you go into a skilled nursing home, you do need some of the same care that regular patients get, but Huntington's has its own set of issues. So if you aren't skilled with that, if you don't know what to recognize, then you don't know how to properly care for those patients. So it was difficult watching the staff not being able to properly care for him. And I'll give you an example. So with Kennedy, while he was in the nursing facility, again, like I said, he's nonverbal, but not completely nonverbal. He can still say a few words. He still has some cognitive skill, but because he was in the hospital for 8 months, he lost his ability to walk. He didn't receive any physical therapy in the hospital. So he can't walk. And his mobility, with Huntington's, there comes a nervous system side. So his mobility is off. His ability to take direction is not that great. So just getting him dressed is a challenge in itself. Like he may be instructed to put his arm through his shirt. Well, he may jerk it out or he may flex it in, you know. So if he's not doing that in the manner in which a staff member would like him to get that item on, they may get frustrated and just leave and just walk away. So it was difficult, watching those kind of things that he had to go through. Also, with him being, nonverbal, not being able to communicate fully, he couldn't tell me when he was being mistreated. So that in itself is a challenge. The only saving grace is that his personality, he is always a happy-go-lucky person. So when I see him, he is always upbeat and he's always happy to see me. So he wouldn't know if he's getting mistreated or not, but I know as his caregiver, and those are the things that I don't allow for. But it's still difficult to watch.
Wow. Um, and as far as the way I function, first of all, I've been through hell and back as far as my symptoms. I went from having to use a rollator, a cane. I had hundreds of falls. I've been
Mm.
hospitalized so many times I can't even count, and I have been through it. In it, I mean, experiment. Doctors would experiment with different drugs, um, and I finally came. And now I'm to a point now where I can actually function at a high level. And how I do that is I have I call it my dream team. I have a dream team of doctors that I created together, that I found from the HD clinic here at the Cleveland Clinic. And what I did was I incorporated the stuff that traditional and non-traditional medication. So I take drugs every 12 hours. Okay. Otherwise, I'm a shaking mess if I don't take my medications. So that's one thing. The drugs simply hide the physical symptoms that I had manifested. So it masks the symptoms so that you can't tell. And I can still speak. And as long as I can still write and think and all this, I enrolled in college. And what I did was I went back to school because I was told by a neural psychiatrist that the best thing when you're going to have a cognitive decline is to go back to school, even if it's studying something like art or whatever, basket weaving, anything you want to study. Just as long as you're able to go to class and actually, take a class step by step and and just do one class at a time. And that's what I did. I did one class at a time, and it turned into 2 degrees. I got an associate's degree, and then I got a bachelor's degree. And I even wrote, and I made it my journey to write a book. And I said, you know what? As long as because I believe in God, and as long as I'm blessed to have a voice and I'm able to talk about what it's like to see, because there's a lot of people out there that talk about Huntington's disease, but they don't really understand what it is. They don't really understand what it's like to be in the skin and in the body of a person with this disease. And it's crazy because no 2 days are alike. Some days you have more, you're fatigued. Some days you have more of a, you might be a little moody. Sometimes your sleep is a problem. You may have problems with your sleep. So what I do is I take medicine every 12 hours. I exercise. I actually also take medical cannabis. I take medical cannabis pills, and I do gummies or the tinctures, and I take those. And as a non-traditional, my doctors everybody's on board with my treatment plan of what I take, and it all works for me. I just basically I approach it in a holistic way. When if I notice my balance is a little off, I'll get sign up for PT sessions. If I need acupuncture, I'm blessed to have insurance. I have really good insurance, and I am lucky and fortunate to have the resources or access to the resources here in Cleveland, to these places to get the care that I need. And I have doctors that care. These doctors actually care. I believe they care about their patients, and so I'm fortunate that way. And so I keep a sleep journal. I keep a health log. I keep up with my medications. I actually take notes every time just to make sure, because sometimes my memory can be a little off. So I take notes constantly. I'm constantly writing down something, writing. I'm constantly trying to learn new things, even if I have to rewatch something online all the time, like an online class. If I have to rewatch a lesson over and over again, I'll just do that. I'll just take my time. I take my time and I do what I have to do, because I know that in the end of the day, it's about me running my own race. I'm not competing with anybody else, but I'm in this body at this time right now, and I'm going to make the best out of my situation as much as I possibly can. So that's why I won't shut up. I'm going to be everywhere, anywhere and everywhere, and letting people know that people of color with Huntington's disease we do exist. And I want people to know that you can still, even with this disease, even with this diagnosis, you can still find a way to function. It depends on where you are cognitively, but there are ways to function. There are ways to manage your condition and to try to live the best quality life that you can. My mother is in a nursing home, so my mother has, her situation is much worse. But like I said, as long as I'm not in a nursing home, I am going to do everything I can to fight another day, every day. And I'm grateful every day. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be here, because, I could have fallen and cracked my head and died. Anything. I could have fallen, because I've fallen down steps, up steps. I was
Yeah.
in New York City during this time when I had all these falls and everything. And New York City can be a little bit, can be a little crazy at times. And people looked at me and thought I was either a drug addict or an alcoholic. I mean, I was, and I was, sometimes by strangers, I would be treated a certain way. Like on the trains, they would get up and move their seat if they see me shaking and stuff. So it would mess with me a little bit, because I would be like, wow, I'm here all by myself. I have nobody. I have no family here in New York. So now I know that in the end of the day, I still don't have my family to help me with everything, but what I do have is I have a really good, strong medical support team.
I have a question for you. What stage of Huntington's was you diagnosed at?
Um, the doctors said that they weren't sure what stage I was in when I was diagnosed, because of the trigger that brought on the symptoms. I was living in a place where I was exposed to carbon monoxide and gas poisoning for about 22 months. So I was breathing it in an apartment in New York City. I was breathing this stuff in, and the doctors believe that that is what triggered the symptoms to be the way they are, because usually people don't start with choreatic movements right off the bat. People start with cognitive problems or other problems first, years before they start having, and then they have the movement problems.
Yeah,
But me, it
movement
was
is
just
usually at the end.
at the end, right? So that's why they are confused about my situation, because they're
Mhm.
like, wow, this is unique, but they also know that environment can play a role in
Mhm.
the onset of the age of onset of the disease. And how
Mhm.
I know that is from the Venezuelan project study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, with the medication that you're on, did you find that it was trial and error getting to the point where you are now with different things that you had to use?
Yes, I take things for I take medicine for the choreatic movements. I take medicine for that. I take medicine for my mood. I take, so I take drug for that. I take medicine to help me with sleep. I take medicine to help me with just I mean, just everything, except I don't take anything for cognitive. I did take a cognitive drug a long time ago, but that
Mhm.
they found it didn't work.
Okay.
So it was a lot of trial and error with different drugs,
Okay.
but finally I have a cocktail of medicine that I take every 12 hours.
Okay.
And these drugs actually work really well for me. Most people, when I first started taking the Huntington's drug, I would sleep for 16 hours,
Mm.
13 to 16 hours. I mean, I was knocked out because the drug would
Mhm.
knock you out. But
Mhm.
now you would never know that I was on that drug, because I can actually function quite well,
Okay.
after taking the dose.
Okay.
I take it at 9 and 9.
Thank you both for sharing. I do have one final question, and it's basically, what advice would you give to other African American families going through this disease? What what is a word, or what is a line of advice you would give to them? I know HD Reach in North Carolina is amazing. Erica and myself are going out to nursing homes doing in services so that we can educate them. We are trying to go to ones that we know that we have patients at already. So, Miss Cathy, if you would like to separately after this email one of us, because again, if they're not educated, they don't know how to handle the situation.
Mhm. The issue that I have come across with that, since being out of the hospital, this is the second nursing home that Kennedy is in. I fought religiously to get him out of the first one, and with the help of Brandy Dillenbeck, we were able to get him out of that first one, and he is now in the second one. The issue I find with the nursing homes is they have to be open and receptive to want to learn about Huntington's patients,
Mhm.
and how to interact with them on a daily basis, and it's just not there. So with both of those nursing homes that he is in, they were both reached out to receive that free training, and it was not receptive.
Any advice you would give, Tania, to families?
Well, I would say, when you go to doctor's appointments, try not to go alone. Try to have somebody with you that you trust to help with the navigating with the questions with the doctors. If you're not comfortable with the doctor, move on. You can, that would be my strongest advice, is just move on and find somebody else that's more qualified and that hears you. Because if they don't hear you, if they talk like they're talking down to you or whatever, then you need to definitely get away from them as fast as possible.
And just to
Because they,
piggyback off of
yeah.
what Miss Allen said, I agree. You definitely need to have someone with you at doctor's appointments. You definitely need to have someone with you that's going to advocate for you. Um, Sometimes, when you're in a doctor's office, you can't always receive what they are saying to you, especially if you are the patient and you are going through. So it's best to have a second set of ears to hear that information so that it can be relayed back to you and you can understand it, maybe more so in layman terms, or just so that you can get the information and the knowledge. And again, like she said, if these doctors aren't listening to you, you leave, you go to another one, you find somebody who will take you serious enough and listen to you, that what you are going through in your body is real.
I love that. And I think that's one thing I like about my position is that I'm able to follow up with these families, not just at their doctor's appointment. It can be every day if it needs to be. If I need to pull HD reach in or whatever we need to do, whatever may be challenging, I can be that person. And for those who look like me, that they feel comfortable. And you're right, you got to get the most out of your doctor's visit, and you have to be comfortable. I appreciate both you ladies. You both are a blessing. I do have an appointment that I have to go to. I truly appreciate you both sharing, and I hope this is not the end of us discussing and talking. It's just really mind blowing, and you're challenging me, Cathy. And I'm going to read that article. I feel like for myself, when I hear things, it's a challenge to myself to learn. I want to learn as much as possible so that when I'm talking to families, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm making everybody in the room feel comfortable because it's real, and we live in a world where we're facing things on a surface level, and then when you add a rare disease on top of it, that's just another layer for us, and
Yes, it's
it's
more
hard and
challenging.
it's challenging. But Tanita, you're a living proof,
Yeah.
and your family is too, Cathy. I'm just addressing it like you're a living proof. So I appreciate you all. Erica's gonna finish up.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
You're
Latorius.
welcome.
After just hearing this discussion, it really kind of, and also reading your book, Tanita, I mean, it really kind of puts into perspective, as me, a very pasty, pale, white individual. I barely get a tan in the summertime, but somebody who, like, when I think about a lot of interactions that I've experienced within the healthcare system, it's from an extremely privileged point. I have not had to document every single thing, every one of my interactions with certain people. I've been fortunate to have landlords that have listened to me when there's been issues going on in an apartment, like what happened within your story, Tanita. And I've been fortunate to find some resources and things for family members that happen to work, or the right medication that just worked well for my loved one. And this brings back to myself to a reality of that is not what everyone experiences. That is not reality. And we as all individuals need to be taking the extra mile to protect our families of color, our different communities, our different cultures, and we need to be advocating as well alongside everyone, especially within the HD community. This needs to be added within trainings. This needs to be conversations had of everyone can have Huntington's disease within their family. There is no color barrier. There is nothing that separates this genetic mutation due to the color of someone's skin. And healthcare treatment and the treatment of these different populations and minority communities, there is no excuse. There is no excuse. There isn't.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
But I'm so thankful that you both came on today to kind of talk about your stories. And I hope whoever's watching this webinar in the future, it either gives them strength to go, okay, this is how I can arm myself. I've heard Cathy's story. I've heard Tanita's story. I can carry Tanita's book in with me. I can carry Cathy's study in with me. I can arm myself. And for anybody else who may look like me, I hope they look at this and go, we need to be advocating for everyone, especially within this disease, but also just within the healthcare community, with life, with everything. And we need to acknowledge that racial injustices happen, and it's very real today and not anymore. I know that's just so simplified, but we need to do better at taking steps and acknowledging that this is reality for so many.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for even having this webinar, this discussion. It means a lot to me to have these type of conversations and to share, you know, my experience and also really shed light on the experiences of people of color, especially with a rare disease. So I wanted to thank you and thank HD Reach.
Absolutely.
Wonderful webinar.
So thank you. It's wonderful because you guys are here and because you're so raw and honest. So thank you. Does anybody else have anything else that they would say or like to say to anybody watching this?
I would just like to say that as we continue to keep pushing, for awareness for Huntington's, that I don't consider it a rare disease. It's just not highly talked about, but I don't consider it rare. We just have to continue to keep pushing, and advocating for our family members and friends as they continue to go through.
Well, thank you, ladies, both for being on, and thank you, Latorius, for facilitating this incredible conversation. If anybody has any questions, you're watching this webinar and you go, reach out to HD Reach. We can get you in contact with Cathy and Tanita, and we're here for you, and we're going to advocate. We're going to fight, and everybody deserves access to care.